Hey y'all, what's up? It's me, Down Weeb here, back with part 11 for What If Deku Had Chakra. This part will be one of the longer parts I made, so hope you can show support and hit the like button on this video, comment down below what you thought of the video, and subscribe to the channel for more videos from me. Anyway, let's get into this part. If you have not already, make sure to go back and watch the previous parts of the series so you're all caught up, and yeah, let's get into it. That's impossible, Deku would be thinking, as we see Deku's eyes beginning to shake as he looks at the screen, and there he sees the nine-tailed beasts from the past. Those are... We see flashbacks of the Nine Tails wreaking havoc over the Leaf Village, causing destruction in its wake. Then we see all of the Tails, the One Tails as Naruto battles it outside the Leaf Village during the Chunin exams, the Eight Tails, and so on and so forth. The old man, he told me about this. This is what Deku would be thinking, as he thinks back to when he had first met the Sage of Six Paths, who had told him about the history of the Naruto world, as well as the nine-tailed beasts, which would collect together to create the Ten Tails. If Overhaul's collecting all of these tailed beasts, then there must be only one thing that he's after. He's trying to revive the Ten Tails. Deku would be absolutely shocked, not able to say a word to Night Eye or any of the other heroes who were there, as he is trying to stumble over his words, explaining what's going to happen. We have to hurry, Deku would shout, as his sweats began to pool out of his skin. He would have another flashback of the Ten Tails, seeing its massive destruction across the land during the Fourth Great Shinobi War. He would tell Night Eye immediately, Night Eye, if we can't get there in time, if Overhaul manages to combine all of those monsters together, this world... I don't know if even All Might could stop it. Deku's hyperventilating at this point. Night Eye and Mirio would both be trying to consolidate him, asking him if everything's alright and what's going on. Deku would pull himself together as he wipes his forehead, saying that they need to get there now. With Deku asking what's going on with the girl, they wouldn't have any information on her, but Deku would think she must be extremely important for this plan if Overhaul needs her to combine the tailed beasts. Could she have some sort of sealing technique? Or, no. There's no way that she could have chakra as well. That's impossible. The Sage of Six Paths told me that I was the only person in this world who could use chakra at this point. Deku would think as he's analyzing his situation that he has coming to him now. Deku would take a deep breath before asking Night Eye how fast can he pull everyone together for the strike mission. With Night Eye now understanding the imperative of the mission, with Deku explained to him that those monsters can combine into one ginormous beast powerful enough to destroy a continent, he would be extremely shook as well, with him asking Deku how he knows about this. Deku would say that his quirk has something to do with these beasts, but he wouldn't go further than that. Well, Night Eye is collecting all the heroes that he can get at the moment to get ready for a strike op mission. Deku and Mirio would be sent out on patrol to help Deku calm his nerves. With Deku and Mirio walking, Deku would begin to calm down, as Deku's breathing less rapidly now, and is able to critically think about the situation. Mirio, how far can you get with One For All right now, do you think? Well, with my current strength, I could probably manage about 25% of my overall body if I spread it out completely. But then again, I could probably get more if I really pushed myself. Mirio would hold his fist up, thinking power. With Deku now thinking if there's any strategy he could use using Mirio's raw strength against the tailed beasts. He doesn't know how One For All would actually shape up against these tailed beasts, thinking about how strong they are from the memories he's inherited from the Shinobi generation. He would think about any plan he could use to counteract against them, thinking if there's any technique that he could remember from the past that could control them. Wait a minute. He remembered from a very old memory of Hashirama Senju, his own great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, about a technique that someone called Madara Uchiha had used to tame the Nine Tails. Madara Uchiha. And Uchiha, he would think. Wait. Deku would remember that Aizawa actually has the Sharingan, after Deku would use his chakra to artificially devolve his own quirk back to chakra-related power, which gave Aizawa an extremely high upgrade, allowing his quirk to be used more as well as use his life energy to use it instead, which made his quirk much stronger. Eraserhead is the only person alive right now who has any Uchiha blood left in him. If he's coming on this mission, there might be a way we could use his quirk in order to tame the tailed beasts, he would think. As suddenly they would round a corner. We see Overhaul and Eri standing there, with Eri running out, as Deku would turn to the left, shocked seeing her running towards them. Overhaul would apologize as he and his minion come up, walking behind Eri, as Eri would run behind Deku and hide behind him as Overhaul's coming closer. You know, daughters, how they can be, Overhaul would say, calmly trying to get Eri back to him. Deku, who knows that Eri is definitely supposed to be important to his plan, would try and keep Eri back as he's about to extend an arm. Mirio would grab Deku's hand as he pulls it down, with Deku turning around, his eyes lighting up as he and Mirio lock eyes, both of them uncertain of the situation. With Eri looking up in fear as she's taken away by Overhaul, her eyes are filled with fear, and as she looks towards Deku, he can only think one word: help me. As Deku's being pulled away by Mirio, Deku's speechless as they get back to the actual HQ of Night Eye. Deku would be shaken to his core from this event as he realizes that he just let someone who was crying out for help go without even putting up a fight. As Mirio now bangs his head into the table, feeling the same exact pain, he told Deku there's nothing they could have done. If Overhaul and that other guy together could have beat both of them and had actually taken them out before returning to their base, their defenses would be up, and there's no way the strike team could work. With Deku and Mirio now both being stumped and also feeling complete regret of not saving Eri, the strike team would be pulled together, with Aizawa definitely recommended by Deku, as he would tell him that he thinks Aizawa has the potential to perhaps be able to cancel out the tailed beast's power. Around a day ago, we can see Kirishima and Facum's team now wandering around the city on their nightly patrols. Suddenly, an outrage is happening in a crowd, where we see around a low-time criminal about to inject himself with a needle. We see him with scissors and needles coming out of him, as Kirishima would come in to intervene. As Kirishima was about to attack this seemingly weak villain, he would inject himself with the needle, and eventually his quirk would get powered up. Suddenly, needles begin to spring out of his body, faster than they were going before, and they're becoming larger and larger, as his entire body is seemingly more muscular as well. Kirishima is getting cut up, as he's using his quirk to harden his body so he can combat this attack. With Kirishima having to go into his ultimate mode, where he goes into his maximum levels of hardness, don't take it out of context, Kirishima would then attack the villain and defeat him just like he would in the original with his unbreakable mode. Once Kirishima had done this, Facum would congratulate him, and this would be when the call for the strike meeting would be arranged. With Kirishima's part out of the way, and then reporting about this strange drug that boosts quirks that's been apparently being sold around the cities to villains, now Night Eye would begin to picture together the idea of what's going on. We have villains using artificial drugs in order to boost their powers. We know that Kachisake, the leader of the current Yakuza group that we're facing, has been collecting 9 large beasts with different numbers of tails. And according to young Midoriya here, they can be combined to create something that's on a continental level of destruction. Overhaul's quirk allows him to alter and combine things, meaning he's most likely planning on using his own power in order to merge these beasts. The only question I have is why he hasn't done it yet. Deku would be thinking about this as Night is explaining this to them, as he then trying to piece together what the drug has to do with the tailed beasts. Eventually, they would begin scouting out the blueprints and figuring out how they're going to be invading the Yakuza's base. While the heroes are debating this, we see Overhaul meeting up with the League of Villains, just as they had before in the original, with Mr. Compress's arm being dislodged from its area that it had used to be comfortably living in. We see Overhaul overpowering the League of Villains rather single-handedly. No pun intended to Mr. Compress. With Overhaul basically having complete power over the League of Villains, Toga and Twice would be sent over to Overhaul's to work for them for a while, just like they would have been in the original. However, when they arrive at the Yakuza base this time, they are sent strictly to a very specific area where they are allowed to be, and they are not allowed to go into any of the lower levels of the base, with Overhaul's base being much, much deeper underground than it would have originally. Toga and Twice would swear that they could hear roars coming from down the hall. Damn, these guys are hardcore. I mean, they're so lame, Twice would think, as he says it aloud, contradicting himself once again. With the heroes now on their way to the Yakuza base, having everything planned out, Deku would be sent along with the strike team of Mirio, Aizawa, as well as Rocklock and the others from the original First Strike Squad that were sent down to the base, with Uraraka, Tsu, as well as the other students working on work studies being up above, with Kirishima being the exception with Fat Gum and the rear vanguard. With now everyone invading the base, we would see Ryoko, the dragon. If you don't know who she is, she's the dragon hero, now fighting with the actual guards outside of the Yakuza base. With Deku as well now being in the forefront using his shinobi skills, he would use shadow clones to investigate every corridor, making sure which one was the right path ahead of time, by using his own ability of wood style as well to break through any pathways that he needs to. He takes out several villains or Yakuza that are guarding the different hallways. Mirio, of course, would be moving ahead, this time even faster since he now has one for all with yellow sparks charging across his body, causing his quirk to be overdriven with power, as he's now moving ahead. With him now making it to the lowest levels of the floor first, suddenly distortion would begin to affect the entire underground base, as we would see the villain who was able to affect the area around him now using the drug in order to stop the hero's assault. With now Eraserhead using his Sharingan to look ahead and see what the actual villain's doing, to see what their quirk is and how it works because of the Sharingan's abilities, he would tell Deku what's going on and how Deku sent some wood clones over that way so that they were stronger and could deal with attacks. With Deku now teaming up with Aizawa as the two of them now work together, Falcom and Kirishima would be taken down to that lower path where they would battle against the two other Yakuza members from the elites that Overhaul has, with Kirishima barely able to withstand the final strike just as he was in the original, and Falcom releasing all of his power at once to defeat the two of them. With Kirishima and Falcom's victory, but both being exhausted, they would take a small break before they climb back up to meet with the rest of the group. By this time, however, Deku would have already been catching up to Mirio, as they had taken care of the distortion villain. With Deku running into twice as well as Toga, Toga would be extremely hesitant to fight Deku, as Toga still has a small kurusu on Deku because of the Stain incidents and how he reminds her of Stain because of his shinobi-like appearance and such. With Deku avoiding that crisis and the two of them escaping the lair of Overhaul, Deku would now descend to the final floors. As he's walking, he feels the door shuddering. There's no way, he would think. As he walks up to the door inside, he would place his hand. He could feel it. There's chakra inside this door, he would think. As Deku would then use a jutsu, as he uses one of his hand seals to push the door open. There we see Mirio reaching out to Deku, as we see Ares shielded by his red cape. With Mirio holding out a strand of his hair, Deku would know what's going on. Suddenly, a bullet would be shot from the edge of a gun, as Deku's eyes lock with the person shooting it towards Mirio. Mirio is about to lose his quirk. Mirio, however, with his reaction speed, knows what's going to happen, as he's already had the one bullet hit him before, which was less effective, and basically he knows that if this bullet hits him, he's going to lose all of his quirk, and One For All will go along with it. So the only person there who can actually take the power is Deku. Deku would lunge forward, using Sage Mode, Wood-style Sage Mode immediately, pushing all of his body forward as he bites down on Mirio's hair and swallows it immediately. As soon as the power transits to Deku, we suddenly see a blood burst out of Mirio's side as the bullet hits him, taking away his quirk of permeation, and as well as the sparks of One For All that were left behind. With Mirio falling and Deku now becoming the next successor of One For All, Deku would look up in rage, as he knows that there was nothing he could do. He failed in protecting Mirio-senpai. With him now staring down at Mirio, bleeding on the ground, with Eri crying, he would look to Eri and look over to Overhaul. As Wood Sage Mode style covers his body, Overhaul would see it, as he's shocked. "You possess it, don't you?" he would say, as he begins itching his neck with his hands, his gloves, thinking about it as he lusts for Deku's quirk, his power. "You have what they have, don't you?" he would think, as Overhaul's eyes narrow, seeing Deku's form of Wood-style Sage Mode. "You have the ancient power, the power of Chakra, the purest form of quirks, the original successor of why our world is the way it is today. You possess it. After thousands of years, hundreds and many years of my own searching, I finally found one. You are the last shinobi." With Deku's eyes shocked, realizing that someone else knows about the secret of the Naruto world, which has become My Hero Academia, Deku would begin to feel a bit of fear. As Overhaul would begin to explain his plans, the two are slowly walking around each other. Deku knows that One For All won't kick in for several hours, just from what he heard from Mirio and All Might, and he won't have access to it during this fight. So he's going to have to use his own power, and there's no way he could even master One For All if Mirio couldn't master it in that short time. With Deku now facing off against Overhaul, Overhaul will begin to monologue about his plan. You already know about the tailed beasts, don't you? Their power, the real power they possess, Overhaul would say. With Deku shocked as how he could know all this information, Overhaul would then say, "You're probably thinking about how I even know about this, aren't you?" "Well, you're not the only one who has some family connections to the shinobi," he would say. As, with Overhaul looking back, his eyes looking to the sky, he would say that he is actually also a descendant of a shinobi. Chisake would explain to Deku how Eri's grandfather, the head of the Yakuza, was actually a long descendant of the shinobi, as well as his influence on the Yakuza in trying to capture the tailed beasts and what they've been doing for years. His entire family had been trying to capture all of them in order to reunite them to bring back the world of the shinobi. Overhaul would then pause before he says, "But that's not why I care about it," he would say, as he looks at Eri, crushing her with his hands from far away as if though to swat a fly, as he waves at her, telling her to come back to him. Eri would begin to tear up again as she cries, holding Mirio's cape between her to cover herself, to block herself from Overhaul's gaze. Deku would stand in front of Eri and tell him to leave her alone, with Eri and then now her horn beginning to grow slowly. Overhaul would then mention, "Oh, you don't know what Eri's quirk even is, do you?" As he would then explain about Eri's power of rewind. Eri can rewind the human body, living things. I can have her rewind me, in fact, to the point where I could have chakra, even probably more than you, he would say. I'll revert this unpure world back to the way it was meant to be, a world of death, a chaos, shinobi, and battle, Shisekai would say, relishing every word coming out of his mouth. Shut up, Deku would say, mumbling, as Overhaul would ask what he just said. Deku would look up, his face now covered with deep black markings, the same as his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Hashirama Senju. I said shut up, he would say, as Deku would lunge forward using Wood Style. Wood Style! Deep Forest Emergence Jutsu! Overhaul would say, having already merged himself with several of the tailed beasts. As Overhaul would then suddenly burst forth a tentacle, he would have the 8 tails merge inside of him already. The 8 tails, Deku would think, as a wave of tentacles would then smash into Deku's force, causing destruction. This is when Overhaul would begin to change, as he absorbs both of the members of the Yakuza who he had along with him. I guess it's time for the final act, he'd say, as he touches the ground, using his quirk to rearrange the ground before they begin to fall deeper and deeper underground. Suddenly we see behind him a cage, and within that cage we see one tailed beast left. The final tailed beast, he would say, before I become the 10 tails Jinchuriki and revive the 10 tails, he would say, as Overhaul would begin to turn around and walk towards the Kyuubi, the 9 tails. We see Kurama roaring as he sees Deku. He could smell it. You're his descendant, Kurama would think in his head. We see an image of Deku, and it suddenly begins to flash, turning back into Naruto. We see Boruto and all of the descendants from Naruto and Boruto and so on and so forth, until eventually reaching Deku. Then that means, Kurama would think. Deku would see Kurama's eyes. As he remembers the memories of Naruto, he would call out for him, Kurama! As Deku would reach his hand out, suddenly Kurama would burst out of his cage using a Bijou Bomb and using some of his chakra to escape. With Overhaul now running towards the Kyuubi, trying to absorb it quickly before it can reach Deku. The Kyuubi would run towards Deku, as Overhaul is just about to touch it to combine it with himself. Suddenly, Deku would grab the 9 tails, as half the 9 tails would be pulled apart again, just as it had been those hundreds of years ago, as Overhaul takes the good half of the 9 tails, while Deku would possess the half of the 9 tails that Naruto had possessed within himself so many years ago. Sealing Jutsu! He would seal Kurama within himself quickly, using a seal of the Jinchuriki by using Wood Style. This won't last long, he'd say, but hold out. With him and Kurama now sharing thoughts, Kurama would say he can only do this one time since they're not perfectly synced, as he would say that he knows that he's a descendant of Naruto, and that's his best friend. Kurama would now think about Naruto and all the memories they had together. One more time, he'd think. Let's do it. As he syncs his chakra with Deku, Deku would open the gate, releasing the seal. As Kurama's chakra began to mix with Deku's, suddenly Deku's body began to get covered with golden flames, as his body is now entering KCM. With Deku now accessing KCM mode, his speed and agility and all of his strength begins to go up. With Deku now realizing that his power is almost quadrupled, he would look over to see Overhaul, whose skin is beginning to turn white. Overhaul began to laugh as he slowly begins to feel himself powering up from all the tailed beast's chakra. If only I could absorb you as well, he would say, as he begins to feel himself changing. Suddenly a black staff would emerge in his hands as he feels himself being purified as he finally takes it all. He finally became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Suddenly his form begins to change as he asks what's going on, as chakras begin to enrage within him. As the chakras begin to overpower Overhaul's body, his body would become more monstrous as he grows to that horrible size, looking like a mixed version of himself from the original as well as the Ten Tails. Deku uses power as he goes into Kurama sync mode and creates a Bijou Bomb, using the Bijou Bomb to blast Overhaul out of his own base and into the sky. Deku would run up the side of the wall in Kurama sync mode, roaring as he feels the Jinchuriki power overstressing his body. Damn it! I can't keep this up for long. I used so much chakra when I was sealing the Nine Tails chakra within me. How did those Jinchuriki do it, he'd think. As he then rushes out of the hole that's within the ground in the middle of the city, he would see Overhaul now fully beginning to transform into the Ten Tails. I have to pull them out now, Deku would think. Wood style, 1,000-arm Buddha. As he would create a 1,000-arm, ginormous fox made out of wood, this Buddha would begin to throw fisticuffs as it punches at faster and faster speeds, copying the technique of his grandfather Hashirama Senju. With a final blow, Deku would then punch Overhaul deep into the ground as he goes deep within himself and uses all of his chakra combined with Kurama's for one last attack. Massive planetary Rasengan! As Deku plunges into the ground, piercing the Rasengan deep into Overhaul, he would feel the chakra being diverged from the tailed beasts as he enters the mind state of the tailed beasts and would help pull them all out using wood style. Suddenly, we can hear a ripping sensation as Overhaul is completely ripped and dissected away from the tailed beasts, with Deku having fully overpowered him and the tailed beast being free. Deku would not be able to hold the seal anymore, as the wood-style seal he'd used on himself to keep Kurama was about to burst. He would let Kurama out as a burst of chakra would come, with Deku almost passing out from Kurama remerging with himself, as Deku now lays on the ground, completely motionless. The tailed beast would thank Deku for saving them, just as the boy that they had known once those hundreds of years ago had done for them back then. Luckily this time, nothing like that happened, they would think, as they remember Kaguya Otsutsuki's revival and the battle of Naruto and Sasuke against her. Deku would tell the tailed beasts that they need to get out of there before the other heroes arrive. They won't understand what's going on, with all the tailed beasts leaving, except for one. Kurama would stay by Deku's side, telling him that he's chosen that he wants to rebond with the Uzumaki line, as he did owe Naruto quite a lot of favors for back then, and he thinks this is the best way he could ever pay them off. He would tell Deku that he's been pretty lonely over the past hundreds of years himself, and that if he wouldn't mind, he would help Deku if he would like to become his Jinchuriki, the first Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails in several centuries. Deku would pass out, as Kurama would tell him he'd meet him again sometime, with Kurama fleeing the scene before the rest of the heroes can arrive. With the last of his consciousness remaining, Deku would have used wood style in order to cover Overhaul and completely trap him so that when the heroes arrive, they could take him into custody. Overhaul will be shrieking as he tells them that it's all her fault, as he looks at Eri telling her that she should have just given him chakra. If she had given him chakra, this wouldn't have happened, and he could have been able to become the perfect Jinchuriki. With Overhaul now being slapped and shut up, and his mental state being completely ruined, Eri would be in a complete state of shock, as she still hasn't used her rewind power like she's in the original, so she has a ton of stress built up in her horns, like, ready to burst. With her about to use her rewind, Deku would see as Aizawa uses his quirk cancellation to cancel Eri's rewind, letting her calm down as her horn begins to shrink. Aizawa would ask Deku what happened, with Deku laying there not even knowing himself. Deku would pass out and fall into a deep sleep, where he would see several figures inside of a dream. These figures would be the previous holders of One for All. By Eri, we can see Night Eye, with Night Eye still bleeding from the spike that was jabbed within him from the battle. Deku would be completely passed out this time, and he wouldn't even see Night Eye. With Night Eye being consoled by the other heroes, he would eventually be hospitalized, with Deku waking up several weeks later after the attack, and him actually meeting some of the users from One For All, which we'll get into next time. He would see off Night Eye, as Sam Mirio would watch Night Eye as he would pass on into the next world. If you guys want to see the next part for What If Deku had Chakra, make sure to hit the like button, comment down below what you thought, and subscribe to the channel for more. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.